All right, let's hit the books. Let us hit the books. Got it.
Recording in progress.
Always looks like it would be showing the top of the laptop.
All right. It's 49 already. Exactly. Shalom. Good morning, good morning, good morning. To get into the zone, guys, it's whew. It's going to be a bomb today. But here we go. We are here. All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Avodas, Kochavim, V'chukas Hagoyim, Prakim, Zayin, Ches, and Tes. We are beginning with Perek Zayin that speaks about the mitzvah of destroying Avodah Zarah and the prohibition, the Isur, of Hana that we may not have, not only not from Avodah Zarah, but not from any of the accessories of Avodah Zarah, as we will see. Perek Shvi has 19 halachas. It's a moededika Perek. So let us start. Perek Shvi halacha Aleph. Says Rambam, mitzvahs asay, there is a positive commandment, la'abed avodas kechavim, to destroy the idols themselves, and umisham and their accessories, and v'chol hanase b'shvila, anything that is made for them. The Rambam quotes a pasuk in A where it says Abed ta'abdun eskol hamakoimis, and as Chazal tell us that this pasuk is actually not speaking about the idol itself, but it's speaking about the places. In other words, the kelim that are made to serve it. And another pasuk in Parshas Vos Chanan, where the Torah writes, Kim koi tasu lohem, mizbechoiseyam tetzoitzu, you should completely destroy their altars, etc. Now, how far do we have to go to destroy it? So here we differentiate between Avodah Zarahs that are in the Holy Land or Avodah Zarahs that are in any other place. Be'eretz Yisrael, mitzvah lirdoy v'achareo, you have to run after it, you have to go after it. Until we get rid of all of, like we mentioned, the Avodah Zarah, the mishamsheha, v'chol hanasa b'shvila. Aval b'chutz la'aretz einon ha'mitzuvam lirdoy v'achareo. We don't have to hunt after it. If we are in control over a location, then na'abed kol avedas kechavim sheboi shenemar. Again, in Parshas Re'eh, v'ibadetem eshemayim min hamakim ahu. In other words, from there we learned that be'eretz Yisrael atem mitzvah lirdoy v'achareyem. In other words, even in a place where we didn't yet conquer, before we conquered it, first go in there and destroy the Avodah Zarah. But that type of going out, taking that level of initiative, is only in the Holy Land. That is regarding the mitzvah Yaakov of destroying idols. Now we're going to speak about what we call the Isur Hana'a, halacha beis, Avodas Kechavim, and Umishamsheh, and V'tikroi v'shala. Tikroi v'shala means anything that was offered as a carbon for a Avodah Zarah. And V'chol hanasa b'shvila, says the Rambam, Asur b'hana. We can't even have any type of benefit from it, as it says in Parshas Ekev, V'loisavi soy eva el beisecha. And V'chol hanehena be'echad mikol elu, says Rambam, loikeshtayim. Number 1, it says, don't bring it into your house. No, that's Parshas Ekev. There's another pasuk in Parshas Re'eh where it says v'lo yidbak biyotcha mo'uma, not even any amount. Mashahu, kolshahu. There's no shear. V'nachedim. Okay, just good to remember that, because now that we know that Yechayiv Malchus twice, even when the Rambam will at times only use the word loika, he doesn't have to repeat every time twice. But the isur of violating the isur hana is going to be getting twice Malchus. Of course, with Asra and Edom, etc. Halacha Gimel. If an animal was offered to an idol, says the Rambam, all of the animal is asur bahana. What is all? It's a big chiddush, guys. Lahavdil, by Hegdish, even when an animal was consecrated, there are certain parts of the remains that are not called the animal. Like, for example, the hide goes to the kohen, right? Here, in the look at what we mean by all of it. Even the excrement, it remained in the animal's carcass. That is also asur bahana. The atzmei and its bones, the karne and the horns, utalfeh and the hooves, the and its hide. In other words, everything means everything. Hakoil asur bahana. And therefore, now the Rambam gives you a practical application of the Isur of Hana, and none of it can be benefited from. If you find a hide in the market, but you notice on the hide a siman, which tells you, this was offered to an idol. For example, they would make a circular incision in the hide, Yaakov, opposite the heart and the outside of the animal. That was one of the ways of worshiping idols. And when the animal was alive, they would rip its heart out. So whenever you see a hide in the marketplace that has this circle, this opening, the verstehst, so that's an indication that this hide came from an animal that was offered as a carbon to Avodah Zarah, so then the hide is asur. Hadei kol oisen ha'odah shehem kach, all of these hides are asurim b'hana, v'chein kol kayoytze b'zeh. Halacha dalet. Now, Uma ben Avodas Kochavim, that belongs to a non-Jew. To a idol, God forbid, that belongs to a Jew, there is a big difference. Says Rambam, Avodas Kochavim shel ovid Kochavim is asura b'hana miyad. Shenemer, as it says, psilei Eloheihem tisrafun be'esh. From Chazal learned that Misha Pisaloi, from when these sculptures, these idols were fashioned, even prior for anyone worshipping them, it is already, from when the Goy took it as his Eloha, it's asur, and asur b'hana. But Vishal Yisrael, even if the Yid, God forbid, made an idol with the intent of worshipping it, prior to the Yid actually worshipping it, it's not yet considered an idol. This is based on a pasuk shenemer on Parshas Kiseitze or Kisavi, I think. V'sam baseiser. You're hiding it, you're putting it in the hidden. So Chazal learn at sheyase lo dvarim shebaseiser shehem avodas. Now this you see how we really understand that the pnimius of a Yid is so far removed from Avodah Zarah that even though b'chitzonius haratzon they designated it for idol worship, until you actually did a maisa of avodah, it's nothing. Now, that difference is only in the idol itself. We began this peirik by grouping together avodah zarah, umishamsheh, v'tikrei v'shalom. Says the Rambam, umishamsheh avodas kechavim, any accessory to an idol. Here there's no difference whether it belongs to an Ovid Kechavim, which means to a non-Jew, whether it belongs lahavdol to a Yid. Eino masurim ad sheyishtamshu behem la'avodas kechavim. Because don't forget, Umisham Sheh is not the idol itself. So even if it belongs to a guy, if it wasn't actually used as an accessory, okay. Halacha. If someone fashions an idol for someone else, even though he's chayiv malkis, why is that, guys? We already learned that in Pei Gimel. It says veloihei masecha loisasu lochem, can make it, but scharoi muter, which is a bomb. The money you got paid, question is why? Why don't we say that the money is a benefit from the idol? Says the Rambam, Va'afilu asolo oivit kechavim. Now, you can answer, I'll tell you why. Because it's only an idol only once it's worshipped. The Rambam says, yeah, but this halach is true even if this was made for a goy. That means the moment the idol is ready, since it's the goy's idol, and he wants it for an idol, it's already considered a avodah zarah. Now, the question is, why isn't the money you got as exchange of this idol, why isn't that asur b'hana? So the Rambam says, gavaldik. Even though the idol, right, no, the money you got paid for it is not asur. It only, even by the goy, it only became asur when it's a final product. The the final hammer blow that made it complete, which is from that point and on, it's asur b'hana. That final makah b'patish is not worth a shava pruta. Or let me use the words that we are familiar from the Gemara. Yesh schirus mitchila v'atzoif, which means that if I'm hired to do something, I get paid $10. I get paid for this little action a penny. For the next little action, another penny. That's how we look at it. Not I get paid nothing until the makah b'patish, and the makah b'patish is machayev all the money. Since yesh l'schirus mitchila v'atzoif, so therefore, the money that I'm getting paid until the last, less than a pruta, was for working for not an idol. So therefore, it's not considered an exchange of an idol. I'm getting paid for my work. Now, if a person buys scrap metal, and in the scrap metal you also find little getchkalach idols, so now what's the point? Here you got a problem. You want to give it back. Question is, can you give it back? Can you get your money back? If you own it, if you own the idol, this is an idol belonging to a goy, selling it, you can't have enough from the money that you get from it. So, did you own it? So the Rambam says like this. First of all, if you gave the money but you didn't do Mashiach, when there is a transaction, Yaakov, remember these rules, Bava Metzia, between a Yid and a goy. What is kaina by between a Jew and a goy? Mashiach. So if you didn't do Mashiach yet, you don't own it. Then give back that idol to the goy and get a discount. You're not selling it. There was never a sale. Furthermore, even if you made Mashiach but you didn't give the money, what does that mean? You can argue own it. No, you don't own it. It's called a kinyan betos. Had you known there's an idol, you never would have bought it. So if you, now you should say that no matter what, but we'll see in a moment. So but since over here you never would have done it had you known, this falls into the rules of mekach tosu, and therefore what? You can give it back, give back those little idols, and get equivalent amount, get the discount. However, nasan ma'ois umashach. It's not only right you paid the money, gave the money to the guy, you already made mashicha. By the way, when I said before that you mashach l'nasan amois, it's not that you get the money back. You discount the money. But now you want to get the money back, even though, guys, you were not coin it. Kinyan betos doesn't change, but here it has the appearance, because you're giving him the getchke, and you're getting money back. So since it has the appearance of you selling an idol, at kedei kach, the money that you received has to be completely destroyed, because as we learned right now in the Spedic, the money, had you taka sold it, it would have been asur bahana. So you have to destroy the money. No, it looks like an exchange. The ger, two brothers, two siblings, but one of them converted, and their father was an idol worshiper. So it was prior to making the division of the estate. So the yid can tell his brother, you take the idols, and I'll take money. It's not called an exchange. It's not called an exchange because we don't view it that everyone owned everything and each one is making a sale. They're just clarifying, right? Yesh bereira, what each one got from the outset. But if the items came into the possession of the ger, here, even if it's not his, even if we're going to say Chavre Yesh Bereira, even if he does nothing to do, it looks like, that Rambam is emphasizing, it looks like he's making an exchange because he's physically taking something that appears to be his, and he's giving it to his brother in exchange is giving him something else, and that's something that you may not do if indeed you would have owned it. Halacha Vav.
What's the idea of Yam HaMelech?
Yam HaMelech is just an example of destroying something, making sure you can never have benefit.
There's a lot of ways to say that something needs to be destroyed.
I think the Rambam is going to write that explicitly. That's the meaning. When something is asr ba'na, doesn't mean dafka in Yam HaMelech. You can rub it out and throw it into the ear. Halacha 6. Chavre tsurais, images. Shason evde Kochavim lunoi. Goyim made. What did we learn? We learned yesterday about which surahs are allowed to be made, which surahs are not allowed to be made, but that's not an idol. Mutaram ba'na. But if there's an image that he made, Laveris Kochavim, especially since we just learned that if it belongs to a guy, even if he did not worship it yet, since it's designated for, it's awesome. So now we got an issue. When I see a surah, what do I have to, what's the chazaka? Was it made for beauty? Was it made for an idol? Okay, it's a kol surahs, and I'm saying back for him. Pashut the thing. People that live in villages are poorer. They're not into the art. It's a practical thing. If they have an image, Avodas. First days, people in the city, chashuva people, they have art. So let's go. If you find it in the village, then we say asurum ba'na, because It's not for sure, but it's a halachic presumption. Avodas Kochavim em asuyim. But if you find different images that you in a city, so then it also depends. It depends. You have to know the minig of the idolaters. If they were placed in the entrance of the city, and on top of that, in this statue, in this image, there is either there was a stick, or there was a bird. This is all images of, right? Sculptures of. Or there was a globe, or there was a sword, or there was a atara, there was a crown, or there was a ring. All of these things are found connected to on the idol. Then chaskos ishul averes kichavim v'asabano. That's the presumption. But the imlav, since it's in a city, people are wealthier. People in the city are cultured people, so they have art. Then you can say bechaskos and lanoi, and now they're mutter. Halacha zayin. Now, to make halacha zayin easy to understand, we're going to learn it with the girsa of the Kesef Mishnah, which is a very big difference. The Kesef Mishnah doesn't begin with Salmei, but he has the words Elilim. Elilim Avodas Kochavim. Elilim means images that you don't know whether it's an idol or not. So we're going to actually begin to get into the Sfek Sveika Sugya. And today's Pedic is mamash amazing. That's going to be halacha Yud. But here we're beginning. You have a doubt. In other words, there's an image, you don't know what it is. And you find them, it belonged to a guy, and now you find it thrown out in the market. Oy betoich hagrutois, you find it cast in a bunch of different scrap metal. Here, harei mutaris. Wapshat, like first of all, let me just give a quick intro. We're going to learn later in Pedic Ches the din of nullifying an idol. Now, if you know something is an idol, belonging to a goy can be mevatel an idol, and it's found, thrown, that in itself is not a proof that he was mevatel it. But since here you don't know to begin with whether it was an idol, it's not a tzalmi, it's a lilim, and you find it in a very disrespectful way, you understand? So it's like a sfek sveika. So there's enough leaning, either it never was an idol, if it was an idol, maybe he was mevatel it, so mutarim. If you find them broken. Now guys, we're going to learn later more about bittul in the next chapter. No, then for sure you say it was discarded and it's mutter. Avol, however, if something is a piece of a idol, not a doubt, not a lilim, you know something was an idol. So there was a star that was worshipped, and you find a part of it, a hand of it. How does a star have a hand? Ich weiß nicht, but that's how they made it. Oy mazel, or a different constellation, or the leg, or any limb from mushlach, you find it thrown. In other words, even though you find a piece of it, it could be it was nullified, but no, since you know that it was an idol, could be bittul is not enough. Until you know that the Ovid Kochavim nullified it, Chevra Pedic Ches is going to be the Pedic. A Yid cannot be mevatel an idol. Amazing. We'll explain why. A Goy could. So once you know it's an idol, you have to know he was mevatel it, and a suffix is not enough. Halacha Ches. Hamoitzi Kelim, if you find a article, and on this article, there is an image of the sun or of the moon, or of the derakain. Derakain is a serpent or a fish, some sort of image that the goyim used to design le'avodah zarah. So I guess, is it an idol or not? Again, these are sfekes where you follow a chazaka. If the keli itself had value, that means the utensil was made out of silver or gold or big day shani. Big day shani, they would say it was silk, red garments. Or if these images were carved out in a nose ring, in a ring, then we say that the presumption is hadei elon asurim. However, but if these image was done on any other keli of lesser value, mutarim. Here again, because we can presume that it was made for artistic purposes, for art, lenoi, for beauty. And again, even though we learned yesterday certain noi images a yid is not allowed to make, if a goy made it, it has nothing to do with avodah zarah, and therefore it's not asur b'hana. Other images that are already further away from the common practice than avodah zarah images, chaskasam lenoi, and therefore umutarim. Halacha 9. Avodas Kochavim mishamsheh. And anything that was offered to it, there was no shear. What happens if something has no shear? It's not going to be bittul. So now we're going to go into bittul or to safek or sfek sveka in the cases of bittul, as we'll see. Okay, so if you have an idol, and it got mixed into other statues that looked the same, but those were not made for idol worship. They were made for artistic purposes. Even if one fell into many thousands, Yoylech hakoil liyam hamelach. Wow. Let's go weiter. This is the idol itself. This is the idol itself. We're going to see later. Okay. There was a cup. Guys, this cup is not the idol. This cup is used for an idol. It's called misham shel. Same thing. If it fell into many cups, oy chaticha min habasar. Chaticha min habasar means tikroivis. That means it came from an animal that was offered for avodah zarah, and now it got mixed into other pieces of meat. They all look identical. Yoylech hakoil liyam hamelach. Another example of something that comes from a tikroivis shel avodah zarah, oil lavuv that we just learned about today. So you have this hide, and there is this perfect circle, and you know from the hide, this was the hide that was opposite the heart, and that means this came from an animal that was worshipped, and that got mixed with many other hides. Obviously, if you can identify it, obviously remove it. You can't identify it now. All of them is asr bana. Huge financial loss, as that's the way it is. What happens if you sold an idol, or if you sold anything that was an accessory to it, or if you sold something that was offered in a korban? This din goes to the money. Remember this. And the money also is asr b'chol shehu, as it says v'hayisa chayrim kamoyu, which means kol mashat amevim averis kechavim v'chol mishamsheh, and also and v'tikrafta harehi kamoyu. Now chevre yud halacha yud is about svek. Whoever learns smicha, this is amazing, because we're going to have many different types of applications of svek. Every case you'll see has its own unique chiddush, but we're running through it. Let's go. Averis kechavim. Or a asheda. At least we're beginning before. Let's begin with a suffix. Or an asheda, a tree that was planted for an idol that was burnt. You know what we say? We don't say now that it's burned, it's no longer. No. Efra asur bahana. Guys, they used to use ash for detergents. Remember, one of the detergents, how ironic, was ash. Can't use the ash. You don't say now that it's ash, it's not what it was. Similarly, a coal that belongs to an idol, the coal remains asur, but the flame is muter. That's already why. Mipnei she'ein ba mamish. That's that whole sugya we have in Shabbos regarding carrying a flame. Like there's no mamish, and how can you carry a flame? Oh, now 1 second. Sofek averis kechavim is still asur, but here we go. Chavra svek mutar. Listen to the cases. Case number 1. Chavra, hold your heads. Halt cup. Buckle your seatbelt. One cup of an idol, shenafal ba'oitzet, that fell into a storage house filled with cups. So we already said before, they are all awesome. Chavra, when you take one out, maybe that's not the one. Okay, but maybe it is. That's called a suffix. Now, what happens if peidish kois echad min hatarovis? One cup fell out. Now, guys, this cup is still not good. But now this one cup fell into. Chavra, listen to these words. What does that mean? It fell into two not avodah zarah cups, which means that now you have 3 cups. Normally, not by avodah zarah, this mixture itself will be matir, something that you take from it because of the rule normal of bittul beroiv. But that's key. Not fell into one other, it fell into 2 non-others. Now, when you remove one, now you can have them. How is that? Because what's the 2 things? First of all, you're taking one out of the 3. Maybe the kois of avodah zarah did not fall into the other 2. And even if it did, 2 of the 3 are not avodah zarah. A different application now. Tabashal averis kechavim, with nuances.
Not considered a davar shebabinyan?
No. Not by svek. Tabashal averis kechavim. Shenes arvo b'meya tabois. Every ring fell into 1,000 rings. So far, same thing, right? Now, listen to this, what the Rambam is right. 2 of these rings fell into the Yam HaGadol. Guys, this is another thing. This is a scenario where right now, Einoi ba'olam versus Yeshnoi ba'olam. He's not saying that you should have thrown into the Yam HaMelech. I want to tell you like this, just to cut to the chase, that the 2 theoretically are not needed. 1 would have been enough. But since one falling into the Yam HaMelech, it's a tabas, it's not something large, it's not discernible, so that's another chashash that we want to make sure that we know for sure something fell into the Yam HaMelech. That's why you need to have 2. So it's the number 2 is just because it being a ring. And clearly, if it would have been a larger article that you can clearly see where it is and where it's not, even if 1. But now that it fell into the Yam HaGadol, and what happened now? Now you removed something from the original mixture. There was only one mixture here. Again, mutter. Why mutter? Because 2 things. What's the double svek sveka? First of all, what could be the one that fell into the Yam HaGadol? You know for sure it fell because 2 fell. Maybe that one was the ring of Avodah Zarah. Maybe. I know it's a small and even if it didn't, but so what? But that which you removed from the mixture, maybe is not the ring. Now, the reason why you don't need to have another mixture is because the ring is Einoi Ba'olam versus the first case where Yeshnoi Ba'olam. Shani Omer Doiraisa. Shani Omer Oisa Tabas Oisa B'chlal Shtein. Yeah.
You're saying it's Einoi Ba'olam because you're assuming that the one that fell into the sea is the ring?
No, because not because we know that. Because since now something is Einoi Ba'olam, that allows us to use Sfek Sveka even though there wasn't 2 groups of rings. These are big chidush.
In the case before, where you have 1 with the 2, you said you could take 1 out. What happens to the other 2?
So you take 1 at a time. You take 1 at a time. That's the way you do it.
What's that for?
Weiter. Let's go back. Nis'adva b'meya. Another case. Guys, this is like, I'm telling you, this is a bomb. This you have to spend a lot of time on, but at least we'll read the cases to understand every case. Like, listen, a Avodah Zarah falls into 100. And this 100 now gets divided into 2 groups. But what's important, Chavra, is that it's not an equal division. That's another scenario. 60-40. Now, one of the 40, all of the 40 fell into another group. Not some of the 40. If it would have been some of the 40, then it would have sufficed to have some of the 60. That was the first case we learned in Halacha Yud. Right? Some of it, one of it fell into 2 others. Here, all of the 40 fell into something else, kolamutarais. That other group, kolamutarais. 1 at a time. No, if you take 1 out, you question that one. Sha'ani yoimer, what's this case of svek sveka? Oisa tabas or asura beroifi. Number 1, understand, number 1, the tabas remain in the 60. And number 2, even if the one that was Avodah Zarah was in the 40, but this one might not be it. That's called the double suffix. And here it's Yeshnoi Ba'olam. That's important. That's why you need to have another mixture. Now, however, if Naflu Hashishim Latabois Acheres Kolam Asures, if all of them fell in, because then there's only 1 suffix. No, it's based on the roiv that the Shishim had in it, the Tabas Shel Avodah Zarah, you understand? But what happens if from the 60, not all of the 60 fell into another group, some of the 60 fell into another group, then that group is also okay. That as long as the other group has 2. Or more. Okay, let's go weiter. Halacha Yud Aleph. Ho'ashera. Now, no, the trees that are planted for Avodah Zarah. Ben shoyis and Avodas, ben shoyis Avodas Kochavim. Monachas tachteh. Whether it was worshipped, all right, we'll see more details about this in the 3rd chapter today, Pedek Tes. Whether you had an idol in its shade, underneath it, while it's there, also leisha b'sel kemas. You may not enjoy, have enough from the shade, but you know what, guys? The shade of the tree proper, the trunk. However, look at this. You are allowed to sit in the shade of its sorigim, means branches, and its leaves. Nevertheless, if there's another way where you don't have to walk into any of its shade at all, and therefore you're going to go into the shade of the tree proper, okay, run by it. Halacha Yud Beis. What happens if there's a nest that's in the Asheda tree? So it's benefiting from the tree. The tree is a basis to the nest. So it depends. If they don't need their mother, so even though they're there, the chicks are muted. Look how far we extended. But chicks, little, when they're even little, they can't fly on their own, they can't walk on, they have to be in the nest. Or even more, the eggs, in other words, they need their mother. Asurim, because shahadeho asheda kamoi basis lohem. Now, Chavah, just understand that this is a darabanan, because we are afraid that if you'll have enough from them, you'll have enough from the basis, you'll have enough from the asheda. However, what about the nest itself, the twigs, the nest itself? Where did the twigs come from? Do we presume it came from that tree or not? That's mutter. Maybe that's the way of the world. Birds don't pick that tree to make the nest. Interesting psychology. Halacha Yud Gimel. If you took from an Ashera tree wood, what did we say today, Chevre, in Halach Yud, that even the ash of a burnt, so in other words, the eitzim is idle wood. The heat generated from it is also problematic. And therefore, even if he's sick even post facto, you know what? You may not derive benefit from the heat. Wait for the oven to cool down. And then what happens if you bake the bread in it? Look how far this extends. Hapas asura bahana. Wow. More. What happens now if this bread got mixed into others? So here, at least here, you understand, since it's that far removed, it's not the idol, it's not the misham sheh, it's something that was created from the heat of a burnt, so at least you have to throw the value of one bread, or whatever numbers of breads were made from that heat, and at least the rest you can keep, the rest of the money you can keep. Huh?
Did we say before that fire has no masha, so it's mutar? You said before age has no masha, so it's mutar.
No, it doesn't matter. The heat came from the wood. We learned this. The heat came from the wood. Halacha Yudalit. Even though the shalabas ain't by mamish, but since it's coming from the wood also, from the coal also.
So you can use it for light, but you can't use it for heat.
Doesn't say to use it for light.
That was the first.
Well, correct. The flame, you can use you can use it for light, l'chayra. I don't think so. I don't think that's correct. We learned this, we have to remember, we learned this in the Gemara. If it's lit up, you go into a city of Avodah Zarah and it's lit up at night, you had that case. Okay, halacha yudal. Not al mimeno karkor. What happens if you took a little piece out of the sheda? And now they used to have these machines, these mechanical machines that they used to weave garments with. Some parts were made out of wood. Again, it's very far removed. So what happens if from the asheda word you took out this karkor and you made it part of the loom, part of the machine, and now you weave the garment, the garment is also bana. Look how far. Now, if this garment gets mixed in other garments, so it's like the bread now. That the value of the one garment has to be, you can't have enough from. But at least, are mutarim. Now, can you plant vegetables under this asheda tree, even though it's benefiting in part from the shade that the tree is affording? So, even though during the summer you need to have the shade. And what did we learn? That the shade of the trunk itself is asr bana. But you know what? There's something else. It's called zev zegoidim. The vegetable is not only coming from the shade, the vegetable is also coming from the ground. The ground is mutter. Both of them garmin liyirakis elul tzmayach. And here's the rule, my friends. Then hareza mutter b'chol makim. B'chol makim means even when it comes to the chamur avodah zarah. Lefikach, another example. If a field was fertilized with zevel avodas kochavim, what did we say? That the perisha of the takreivis is asur. So the manure is asur. And you fertilize the field. The nutrients don't only come from the fertilizer, it also comes from the ground. It's called zevaz hagoydim. Mutal is raya oisa. Another example of para shepitma bekashina veris kichavim. Right? It got fat because it also ate beans of avodah zarah. It didn't only eat kashina avodah zarah, it also ate kashina heter. That means its fatness is not only from, it came from two causes. Zevaz hagoydim is going to be mutar. Halacha tezvav. Basra yayin oy peira shechnisum lakrim averis kichavim. Guys, remember this. Even though we said that if an idol belongs to a goy, even designating an idol to be worshipped already makes it into a avodah zarah, that's only avodah zarah proper. But when it comes to tikroivis avodah zarah, it only becomes asur when it was offered. Designation, like what we call a havdil hegdish, there is no hegdish to avodah zarah unless it's an idol proper. If you not only you designated it, it's already in the house of the idol, it's not going to be asur b'hana. But the moment the moment it was offered in front of it, boom, nasu tikroivis. And therefore, even if you retracted, I shouldn't have given that to the avodah zarah, and you take it back, now, anything that you find in a temple, now you don't know whether it was offered or not. Even water or salt, asur b'hana min ha-Torah. because maybe it was offered. What do you get? Like again, we said in the beginning of the Perek, it always means two times Malchus. Okay, right.
This applies to a church?
Sure, the Rambam, we're going to see. The Rambam holds clearly that Christianity is Avodas Zarah. We'll see in today's 3 prakim. If you find articles on the head of an idol, what do you want to know? You want to know 2 things. Was it offered to the idol? It's a doubt. Or someone placed it there. So how would you know that there is chazakas? There are certain scenarios where you can presume halachically. If you found them placed there derech bizoyin, then it was just placed there. If it would have been an offering for it, they wouldn't have placed it in a disgraceful way. The Rambam will explain what that means. What's bizoyin, what's kovet. Kate said, imagine, that's called a bizoyin. If they would offer it to an idol, they would take a coin and they would place the coin on the head of the idol. That's the way they did it. So if you find it hanging from the neck, or ksus mikupeles, if the garment is folded and placed on the head, you would think folded is nice, the opposite. Whenever they would give it to the idol, they would open up the garment. They're dressing it. Here they didn't dress the idol. Fakert, it looks like the idol is to serve a placeholder. That's why it's derech bizoyin. It's okay. Or kli kafoi al rosh, or for keli, imagine a bucket is turned upside down on the head of the idol. That I get. That's derech bizoyin. That's derech bizoyin. It's mamish. It's like using the idol as a mannequin. That's called bizoyin to the idol. Like who is serving whom? Harei lamute. Bepnei shehu derech bizoyin for the idol. But what happens? But if something that is used in godly service, something that's offered on the Mizbech and the Beis HaMikdash to Hashem was found there, anything that's used in Avodas Hashem, for example, flour, wine, oil, in a keli, no matter how it's placed, what did we learn in Halacha Tez Vav? If you find something in the Beis Avodas Kochavim, it's awesome. Here also, in other words, if you find the idol out there, it's not a house, it's not a temple, that is where you look, derech bizayin, derech kavod. But if the idol is in the place where people worship the idol, bein derech kavod, bein derech bizayin, bein derech lemizbeach, to God's altar, to Hashem's altar. Bein derech lemizbeach, anything that's found inside, like we learned in Halacha Tezvav. The presumption is it's found in the temple, but the goyim call a temple, then even if it's only umayim, or only melach, how do you know it was offered to an idol? You have to it has that chazak. Halach, right. U'pa'oir u'markulis, however, when it comes to the idol of pa'oir u'markulis, since they are worshipped derech bizayin, defecating on the pa'oir, knocking down stones, derech bizayin, then anything that found in it, bein b'fnim bein b'chutz, is also ba'no. Because since the idol is worshipped derech bizayin, so that person who hung coins on the neck, he knew it's a bizayin. He dafka did it that way. All of these stones, as long as it's found, let's say, in proximity of a pile, looks like it came from that pile of stones, because it was used in the avodah. If a shrine, that's a word, if a temple of an idol had in that temple a merchatz or a gina, so can you have hana from it? So it gets a little bit tricky here. So I guess nehed and behem, you can have hana as long shaloi b'toveh, which means as long as you don't even have to give a tip to the people that are working there. None of your money will go to them. But if you have to give a toiva means not that they're charging money, but if you have to give any type of monetary, a tip, I'll call that, then you can't go in there. Now, if this is owned both by the church and by an individual, then you can give a tip. Because don't forget, it's not even fully owned by the Avodah Zarah, but you may not give a salary. Why? That's she'asur ligroim hana'a le'Avodah Zarah. So a salary, it's interesting, these are fine lines, I know we have to take time to have this sink in. So a tip, yeah, if there's partnership, but never a proper salary. Okay. Now, one second, what about the bath itself? If the bath is not even Misham Avodah Zarah. The bath is not even Misham Avodah Zarah, it just belongs to that shrine. What you're not having hana'ah from the gina in that temple. You're not having enough from an avodah zarah. Since that gina or the bath is not an accessory to the idol, you're not getting hana from a shamshi avodah zarah. It's all just about making sure the money you'll pay won't be direct salary. Weiter. Halacha Yudches. Merchatz. Okay. Merchatz yesh v'averes kechavim, which was common. Today in LA, you go to a nail. I don't go to people that go to the nail salons, whatever you call that, the mannequins, the pedicures. So you have over there a budalach, avodah zaras. You have a merchatz. It's not a temple, but in there they placed an idol. Can you bathe in there? Yeah. Because it was not put in there to be worshipped. It was put in there l'noi. As it says, Eloheihem, from there we learn, means if it's placed in a place to be worshipped, in a temple, then it's a problem. And he gives an example. In a bathhouse, people go ungarbed. They would place many temples in front of the urinals. But again, if you know this idol was worshipped by people urinating on it, then it was not placed l'noi. Then your presumption is it was placed to be worshipped. The final halacha you test. Listen to this, the final exception. If you have a knife of an idol, right? What did we learn in the beginning of the Perek? Again, anything that's a mishamshei avodah zarah is asur ba'ana. So I'm taking a knife that belongs and was used to idol worship. I can shecht an animal, or if I shechted an animal, it's mutter. Why? How much is the animal worth prior to shechita? Let's say today, $5,000. Even if the animal is kosher afterwards, the animal is worth less. Animal has less value because prior to you shechting it, we're speaking about a good animal. An animal that gets more value after shechita, you can't do it. Prior, the animal can be used to plow a field, it can be used to have children, because you downgraded its value. But the im hoise behem misakenes, if the animal was an old animal, and the only thing you can do is quickly chaparain and shech, that is asurim, because you're misaken. The knife is mesham shaveres kechavim, and if you gave your animal now greater value, you can't have anah. You can't cut a piece of meat because you're masakin. But if a person took the knife of avodah zarah and they chopped up the meat in a way like a yeshiva baruch does, when he finished cutting up the meat, you ruined it. Muter gavaldik. Let's move on with Perek Shmini. Today's a bomb. Everything. Now we're going to learn in Perek Shmini about how do you make something into a avodah zarah. They're very important. But just because the guy bowed down to the mountain, what do you think the mountain becomes asur ba'ana? Not so pashut. Not the whole world would be asur ba'ana. And the din, a little bit more about destroying avodah zarah, which is the mitzvah we learned in the last chapter. And the ikid of here, the other big part of this chapter will be about nullifying an avodah zarah. As we mentioned, a goy could, a yid cannot, but there's a concept of if it belongs to a goy, he can remove its status of an idol. Let's begin. Perek Shmini has 12 halachas. Freilach halacha aleph says that this is the key. Kol she'ein boi tfisas yad adam. Anything that was not manipulated by man. Not manipulated by man. And it was not made by man. We're going to see cases where it's either one or the other is not enough. It's both. Even though it was worshipped, thank God, not mutter ba'ana. No, mutter ba'ana. Let's break this down. And guys, the goyim used to worship everything, but they worship the sun. Why they can't have enough from the sun? No, that sun is a great example. It was not made by man. Everything is made by God, but there's no involvement of man. And even after it was made, there was no tfusas yad adam. We'll see what that means, because once man manipulated a little bit, like if on a mountain, if they dug a hole, that's called tfisas yad adam. That's why we needed a Navi to establish that the Harabayis was never worshipped by the Canaan prior. The Gemara says that. Because had they done something to the mountain as they did to other mountains, then it would have been Asr Ba'ana, Gavalt, until they are Mevatalit. Huh? Shkoyach, very good, Yaakov, we still remember this. Lefikach, if a tree was planted, right? So even though it's nasis by God, but it's tfisas yad adam because the guy planted it. That's why in Asher is asr. If a tree was not planted for idol, and the guy didn't touch it, he just worshipped it. Or the mayonis, you have spring waters, hanoivim lorabim, ve'es habehema. Harei, even an animal, guys, but we'll see again, until they touched it, until this tfusas yad adam, tfisas yad adam. Then harei elo mutar mana. Mamish. Umutar le'echol oisam ha'peiros. Imagine, goyim can be bowing down to the tree and I can eat the fruits. The makim gidilasan, as long as I'm taking it off its place, because the moment they removed it, understand, and then they're selling it, that's not good. Or I can have enough from that animal. The ein tzarach leimer, an animal shehuktzeh l'avodas kochavim, it was designated for idol worship. What did we learn in the last chapter? The idol proper designation makes it awesome. Misham she'avodah zara, you have to actually use it. Here, the animal, even if they would have worshipped it, if they wouldn't have touched the animal, just bow down to it, it would have remained mutter. So mutter ba'achila. Ben shiksula of the ben shiksula akriva, all of it is mutter. Okay.
Is tfisas yad just a movement?
We'll see. The Rambam will say it's something. We'll see. Well, it's a certain mice. The Rambam will give very good examples. Here you go, Rabbi Chen. Something physical was not done to it. Aval asaba maisa, even only kol shehu asara. For example, sheshachad basiman avodas kochavim. The guy cut. He's giving just an example, not in a way that the animal will die. The animal will live, but that cut, like when you cut one of the two pipes, the animal can still live. Then the animal is asar bano. Or if asa'a chalipin la'avodas kochavim, if there is already an idol, and this is exchanged for the idol, wow, that was the sugya. Where the Torah says, v'hayisa cheiram kamayu, so v'hayisa Chazal say, kol sha'ata mahaya mimenu, anything that comes as an exchange of it becomes a cheiram, even though it was not manipulated. Even chalife chalifin, mepnei shenasim demei avodas kochavim. Wow. That if you manipulated it, you made it into a idol now because you worshipped it and you did something to it if it belonged to you. If someone even slaughtered an animal of his chaver to an avodah zarah, now here it's mamash takrevis avodah zarah. Or he exchanged it, right? Here loy nesra, because of a klal she'ein adam oiser davar she'ein shaloi. Now let's go weiter. Same example. A guy bowed down to the floor, to the ground. Lo yasara. Why? Because of the two things. It was not nasa bidei adam, and there's no tfisas yad adam. But what happens if chafar baboyres shichanu ma'arais? If he dug a pit, he dug something in it. L'shem avodas kochavim. That's called, my friends, tfisas yad adam. Like I told you, the Gemara says, no, that if they would have dug on a hill, anywhere in the hill, one cavity, and then they bow down to it, then the whole hill is asr.
You go into the shiurim, how big? And
Doesn't say over here.
Do you say that a person who works, who was mamash avodah zarah, idol worshiper, the work that he does is exchanging for money?
No. Let's go back. Let's go. It's complicated. So some of that we already had in the previous pedic, and we'll have other examples that will touch on this. Let's go halacha beis. Mayim shakar and hagal, water. Water is detached naturally. So it's not called tfisas yad adam. The wind blew up and they bow down to it in the air. Lo yasaran. But if the wave was detached by man's effort, it's another example. But if notalim biyadai, and as the water is detached through human effort, now they bow down to that wave, then asaran.
If he puts that back into the water?
Then you have a problem, as we learned in the previous chapter. It's not batal oilam. You got a big problem there. Let's go. If a stone naturally detached itself from the mountain, here there was an earthquake, and they bowed down to this stone, even though the stone is detached, but it was not detached by human effort, then it's no problem. But what is that Rambam implying? But if they detach the stone and they bow down to it, then it does become us. Allah Yimel. Now here we go further. Yisrael Shazak of Levena. The Yid, God forbid, he erected a Levena, brick, in order for it to be worshipped. He did not worship it yet. Comes along Kochavim and he bows down to it. Now what did we learn before? Ein adam oiser davar she'ein shaloi. When the Yid picked it up to bow it down, first of all we learned that a Yid cannot, just designation is not enough, but here we combine them together. Here we say, like the Gemara says, that since the Yid was Megala Das, right? And the Gilui Das was through an action of lifting up the stone, all of that together will make that Asr. Asar Bana, And the key is, even though the Gemara speaks about that he was Megala Das, but the Rambam emphasizes it's not Stam a Gilui Das, it was a Gilui Das Al Yidei Maisa. That's the way that Rebbe learned Pshat in the Rambam. Shes Kifasa Maisa. V'cheinim Zakav Beitza, similarly, if he stood up an egg. Now, I try to stand up an egg. I don't know how you do that. Maybe you mind the chef. I don't know. Maybe he put it on stands. He put an egg in a position. And then the goy came and bowed down to it. Then it's awesome.
If the goy didn't come down to it, it's not usher.
Many things. First of all, not because designation by a Jew doesn't make it usher. That's why the Yid did it. On the other hand, ein adam oiseh davar she'eino shaloi. But since here the Yid was megala das that he wants us to be worshipped, so now the goy's worship makes it into an avodah zarah. Chatach dalas, if you cut a gourd and or anything a similar vegetable and you bow down to it, again, it's a vegetable, but you cut it out of the ground. That's called tfisas yad adam. So now asara. What happens if someone bowed down to half of the gourd? So the din is the other half is also asr. Why? Because that's the whole Mesechtas Yodos, which is complicated. We view the unworshipped half as a handle to the worshipped half. So a yad, the handle to an idol, is also asr. Harei asr misafik shema. Even though it's not for sure whether we use yodos on half of the same vegetable, but that's enough to asr it. Shema zechatzi kama yad lachatzi anevad. Ilan shenotoyim etchilu shi anevad. If a tree was planted to be worshipped, hasabanon. You can't say it's natural and there's no tfisas yad adam. That's the whole din of an asheda. Now, what happens if you have a tree that was already planted, not for l'shem avodah zarah, but this person, this idol worshiper, vigidoy, he pruned it, or upesali, he carved something into it, and that was done l'shem avodah kochavim. Even if he vriach ve'ikev v'guf shalil and v'yitzis sarigim, even if he put a new piece of, he put it into the ground, a branch, he grafted it, and this new piece has now new branches. So whatever is new, tak is usher. It's like the ashera. But as long as you remove those branches, and they are usher, and the rest of the tree remains mutter. How interesting. So when you manipulate an animal a little bit, shachad, the whole animal becomes usher. Here you grafted the tree. No. Here we say the new piece is usher, but the original tree remains mutter. If someone bows down to a tree, because the tree was not made by you, it wasn't planted l'shem. There's no tfisas yad adam. But kol asirigim v'ha'olam halulavim v'aperes sheyitzim kol zman shu nevad, while it's being worshipped, anything new that comes out, whether it is branch, whether it is fruits, they are asur ba'no. Wow. Okay. Ilan shoyev the Kochavim mishamas peiros. If goyim were guarding a tree and they were saying that this tree is designated, these fruits are going to be used to make beer l'shem lebeis averes Kochavim ploni. And not only do they say that, but indeed, so again, chazakas. We presume that this tree was planted l'shem avodah zarah. That's why they use the fruits to make beer to be consumed on their Sundays, because that's the chuk of an asheda, that its produce should only be used connected to their religious holidays. If an idol was placed under a tree, as long as the idol is under the tree is asur ba'no. Not because we presume it's an asheda, but that's the din. But a natola mitachtov harei ze muter. Okay, weiter. Bayis shebenoi oived kechavim mitchila sheyehei bayis atzmai nevad. If a house was built to be worshipped, the house was built to be worshipped. Even if the house was not built to be worshipped, but they bow down to a house, no, what's the problem? Why? I'll tell you why. Because the Gemara says that since even though a house came, now is attached, now it's karka, since it was detached, we give it the status of something detached. How did all of the materials are tfisas yad adam, even though now it's kemuchaber lakarka? If the house was already built, and and you added, you plastered, you embellished it for an idol, you made it into something nice and new. So the din is, like we learned before, by the asheda tree, by the tree that was not l'shem asheda, but the hivrech v'hirkiv, all you need to do is noitel mashachidish v'hachidish asabanom, mepnei shasolo avdoi, and the rest of the house remains mut. What happens if you bring an idol into a house? As long as the idol is there, it's like the idol under the tree, then the house is asur ba'no. The house is asur ba'no. The moment you remove the idol, the house is mutar ba'no. Let's move, let's watch it. V'chein even shechatzova. If a stone was hewed out of the mountain to be worshipped, that's called tfisas yad adam. And even though it wasn't worshipped, if a goy owns it, so then asur bano, it was already cut out of the mountain. When it was cut out of the mountain, my friends, it was not done l'shem avodas kochavim. All the idol worshiper is doing is vitzira v'kira. He's adorning it, he's embellishing it, shetei aved, with intention that it should be worshipped, even if he did something in the stone itself, which is even worse, like hakika. And certainly less problematic. He added something in addition to, something on top of it. Again, all you need to do is you have to remove that addition, or you have to remove the area of the stone that has something carved in it, and the rest is okay. V'sharo even mutan. Halacha hey. Evet shehemed oleh avodas kochavim. A stone upon which an idol is placed, that stone is only asur while the idol is on it. The moment you remove the idol, the even is muter. Now, you have a house, you live adjacent to a church, and you share a common wall. First case, Shuki, is where the wall is fully on the property on the Avodah Zarah property, fully on the Avodah Zarah property, but it's your wall, and now the wall collapsed. You may not rebuild it. Why may you not rebuild it? Because even though you need that wall, but you're building a wall on the property for the idol worship, for the Beis Avodah Zarah, for the church. So what should you do? You need a wall. Build the wall on your own property. But you know, now we are afraid of something technical. They were used to using the common wall, right? There's no area of ground in between. So if I'm going to go build a wall on my property, what's my chashash? They will use that wall for their house. They're going to get benefit from my wall. So make sure that you put stuff that disallows for them and will force them to build their own wall. So you're going from Union Street to President Street. You understand? No more ghettos over here. And the space now, now, what happens if the wall remains? You have a wall that was built on both properties. And part of the wall is yours, part of the wall is theirs, and the wall collapses. Guys, you know when we say this, we learned this in the previous chapter. Your half is mutter if you can discern your stones. Because the stones of the church, we learned before, is problematic. But if you can, these were mine, then you can have anah. Now guys, the girsa, for the girsa to work, you have to take out the next words, hakalos abana, take them out. The stones that are shalaveris kochavim, and the Rambam now clarifies the half of the wall, both the avanav, whether there were stones, whether it's wood, and the afar, all of it is hasar banam. Let's go right. Halacha vav keitzan ma'abra v'kochavim v'shar devarim asurim biglala kegoin misham shel v'tikrei v'shalah. When we learned in the previous chapter, you have to destroy it. That's the mitzvah. That was a Pedek Zayin. How do you destroy it? Shoichek v'zayir l'ruach. Here's for you, Shuki. It doesn't only, you can either grind it up and scatter the remains in the air, or burn it. And since we learned that the ash is asur, so burning it is not enough, like by Pesach. After you burn it, you have to throw the ashes into the Yam HaMelech. Wow, halacha zayin. Davar she'ein boi tfisas yad adam shenevad. Like we began this chapter, like mountains or animals or trees. Afal pisha nevad atzmei muter bano. But if they added anything to it, right? They adorned it. They were metzapeh, they covered it, the tzipah is asur b'hana. Obviously, because the tzipah is tfisas yad adam. You understand? They covered a mountain, they put gold on the tip. That is asur. V'hanena b'chol shein mehem loika. Shenem leisach men kesav v'zav aleim. You know, we don't say 1 second, the gold is now mechuber. No. That becomes asur. V'chol tzipah evras kochavim, harei hein b'chlal misham sheha, with all of the chumras that we learned in the previous chapter. Halacha ches. Now we're learning about bittul. This is very important. Avodas kochavim shel nachlim. Shebitlu al nachlim kaim shetav l'idei Yisrael. If Yidden don't own it, that's the ikr. Yidden cannot be mevatel an idol. I'll tell you right now the Hasidic logic. You can only be mevatel something if you really gave it credence to begin with. You gave it credence, and you are now reverting that. A Yid bepnimius never gave it credence. Even though if he worshipped it, he makes it into an idol. But since he never gave it that much chashivos, so his 180 turn is not a real 180 turn. So ironically, he cannot even be mevatel. So if it belongs to a goy, and the goy was mevatel, it, we'll see later how. In halacha yud, we're going to learn how. But if he nullified it, then it's mutar b'ana. Shenamar, as it says, psilei aleihem tisrefun be'esh. Which means that only if, when it came into our hands, they were still considering it their God, that is where you have to destroy it. But if prior to us possessing it, they already were mevatel it, harei lo mutarim. Halacha 9, Avodas Kochavim shel Yisrael, masha inken, if it belongs to a yid, eina b'teila la'olam. You have to destroy it. You understand? Like we learned in Halacha Vav, like gurnish, you're going to burn it and throw the ashes into the sea. But you can't be mevatel it. Now, furthermore, even if you and the guy had partnerships, ain't bitulim oil klum. Ella asura bahana lo oilam, and therefore utuuna geniza. V'chein Avodas Kochavim shel nachri, that is now in the hands of a yid. Since now it belongs to a Jew, the bittul of the guy won't work anymore. Ain't bitulim oil klum, because now it belongs to a yid cannot be mevatel. Ella asura bahana lo oilam. We don't say since the guy made it into our Avodah Zarah, let the guy be mevatel it. The yid wants him to be mevatel it. No, now it owns. If it belongs to the yid, there's no more bittul. Ve'ein Yisrael mevatel es Kochavim, even if his idol is in the reshus of Avodas Kochavim. Another din, if the guy is a minor or the guy is mentally not competent, they also cannot be mevatel Avodas Kochavim. It has to be coming from a person that in their pnimius they were once machshavit as a deity, and now they are nullifying it through doing a certain deed, as we'll see in Halacha Yud. If a guy was nullified an idol, whether it's his, whether it belongs to someone else, but ba'al karchai, but he was forced to nullify it, do we say that his bittul is a bittul, even if a yid forced him to nullify it? Yes. Harei zu b'teilam. That's like Avram Avinu forcing the people to bench, because also on some level the guy also doesn't want to be Avodas Kochavim.
So if you buy a church, the money's nullifying it.
We're not you're asking David's questions. Let's say as long as a guy is being mevatel it. As long as a idol worshiper guy is mevatel it. No, it was the same thing that we said as a standard for Yidden, that Yidden b'pnimius are not shaykh to Avodah Zarah. If a guy is not a religious guy, he's not an idol worshiper, he also cannot be mevatel it. In other words, lahavdil, he'll be similar to a Yid. Makes a lot of, in other words, if you don't really believe in that, you can't be mevatel it. If there was an idol that had certain accessories, once that idol became nullified, automatically bittul mishamshel, dafke in that direction, and not in the opposite direction, but bittul mishamshel mutarim v'yasura bano, k'mo yishois achi yivatleno, v'tikreves Avodas Kochavim, but something that was once used in a carbon to an idol, that can never be nullified, guys, not even by a goy. It's amazing. The Avodah Zarah itself, you can nullify. Like we learned in there already before, that if they change their minds, once it was offered, it's usher forever. Now, how do you do bittul? Halacha Yud, Keitzad mevatlam. Here we go. Cut off the tip of the nose. Cut off the tip of the ear. Cut off the tip of a finger. Or pechasa bifanel, flatten out its face. In other words, you're doing an action that shows tremendous disrespect. Even if you flattened out the face without cutting anything off, or you sold it to a tzoyref Yisrael, he sold it to a smelter. The act of selling it to someone who will melt it down is an expression of, I have no more reverence to it. However, if he only gave it to a yid as a mashkan for a loan, or if he sold it to another Eved Kochavim, or even if he sold it to a yid who's not a smelter, who doesn't melt metals down, or if a house collapsed on it and he didn't make an effort to go find it, you can argue, the fact that he didn't make an effort to find it means he's mevatel it. No, it's not enough. Or Ginavua list him and he didn't make an effort to go get it. Or even if he spit on it. See, there's certain things that we view that action as anger and not bittul. He was angry at the idol. So he spit on his face, or he urinated in front of it, or he dragged it, or he threw on it excrement. In these final cases, that's because he's angry. But that's not because he's being nullifying it. People abandon an idol. Is the act of abandonment means... So it depends. If they abandon it during a time of peace, they were not on the run for their lives, then abandonment is ein locha act of bittul more than that. That's why people, I feel abandoned. Because you were bottled. Muteres bahana sharei bitlua. But if Goyim ran away during a war, and they just left their idol over there, asura, mepnei shelo yinichua, only because it was a time of war. Avodas Kochavim shenishbra me'eleh, if an idol broke by itself, that's what we learned before, that just because it broke doesn't mean it was batal. Could be if it was not broken l'shem with the intent of being mevatel it, then the pieces are also asur. If you find pieces of an idol, that was the way when we in the previous chapter when we read the gears of the Kesef Mishnah. Elilim means if you know it was an idol, just because it's broken now is not enough. Maybe it broke by itself. Now, what happens if the idol is an idol that comes apart into pieces? So I guess if even a commoner can bring them back together, so we view every piece as a separate piece. And if you want to be mevatel it, you have to be mevatel every single piece. But if it's an idol that's made out of pieces, but you have to have an expert to bring it back together, even if only one part was broken, l'shein bittul, the whole thing was batel. Kivin shebatel lechem evareh, batel kol hashvarim. Final halacha yud beis. Tzvika is schwitzing over here. I'm schwitzing over here. Mizbeach, this is the second chapter. Mizbeach, mizbach Avodas Kochavim. A altar for Avodas Kochavim. If there's a little blemish on it, so a mizbeach, just to know, was made out of many little steindalach. If it had a pegam, what would you do? So just to know that until the majority of the mizbeach gets blemished, normally you would fix it. So if it was nidgam, you have to have someone purposefully l'shein bittul, not only breaking another part, taking down its majority, but if there's a bimos shenivgam, a bimos is one stone, one piece of wood, one article that's used as a platform for, if it's blemished, it's mutter, because normally they would replace it. How do you mevatel avnei markulis? Because what are you going to do to it? You're going to be, it's used to, so kivan shebana mehem binyan, just disregarding it, the whole service is disrespectful. So you have to build it into a building. You have to use it as cobblestones. That's mamish disrespecting it. Then you're mevatel it. How are you mevatel in Asherah? So here, all you need to do is they were machabed these trees. Remove something from it. When when you pull off a leaf, the shame, the goal is I don't have reverence, and I'm doing an action of I'm pulling off a leaf, or or not makel, or isharvit. You removed anything from it. You made a staff out of it. Or if you planed it, but not to beautify the tree, it didn't need to be trimmed. You did an action that minimized, that took away from the tree, l'shem, disrespect. In other words, actions that express a lack of reverence. But it's not just the feeling of a lack of reverence, you need to have a maisa. All by the goy. Only a goy can be mevatlet. But if you pruned it because the tree needed pruning, he asura v'shafel mutarim. He asura, but she'ofel mutarim gavaldik. Because the she'ofel, these pieces were never worshipped. The tree was worshipped. Like we said before, Yid can have a mevatla asura l'oilam. Avodas Kochavim shel Yisrael ein la bittul l'oilam. Because a Yid to begin with is deeply not machshavit. Chavre, the final chapter, the 9th chapter. Here we're going to learn really the beginning of Masechtas Avodah Zarah, how we are not allowed to do business transactions or other interactions with Goyim, either on the day of the holiday or sometimes even 3 days prior, L'Yom Eideyem, either because they're going to do a good deal, they're going to be happy, they're going to thank their Getchke, Lifnei Ivel Sitem Echshel. Right, and the other reason we had in the Gemara is because if they're going to have monetary benefit prior to the holiday, they're going to spend that money for their Avodah Zarah. Perek Shi 8 we have over here, Gevalt 18 halachas. Wow. Halacha Aleph. Shloisha Yomim Lifnei Chagam, even 3 days prior to the holiday, to our religious holiday of idol worshippers, also likach mehem, you may not buy from them, you may not sell to them anything that is Davar HaMeskayim. Right, any durable item, lil voice mehem ulahal voisam, whether to lend to them or to borrow from them, lipada mehen v'lefrei to get payment from them. Now you can say getting payment from them takes away their money. No, it's not. Healthy people, when they pay back a loan, they have hana'ah that I managed to pay off a loan. And if it's so close to the holiday, he's going to thank his getchke that I was able to pay back the loan. But that's all about documented. Or loans that you have a collateral, so if you don't take payment from them right now, you'll get payment. But if there is a loan that you lent to the guy, but it's not documented, and they want to pay you back even 3 days prior to the holiday, take the money. Because who says they'll pay you later? Now, you can sell to them articles that are not miskayim, things that won't, not durables, like vegetables, or cooked food, has a very short life, shelf life. But that's not on their holiday. That's only prior to the holiday. The Isser of even 3 days prior, that's only in the Holy Land, Eretz Yisrael. But in other countries, we're going to speak about Sunday in a moment. The Rambam will speak about it. If someone did do these transactions 3 days prior, unlike today's 2 prakim, idol, asr bana, b'shamshay asr bana, exchange of an idol. Here it's not exchange of an idol. You shouldn't have done it, but mutar b'hana. However, here asr bana. Wow. Halacha base. On his holiday, you can't send him a gift, unless you know that this individual is not an idol worshiper. If he sends you a gift on the day of his holiday, don't receive it. But if you are afraid of creating animosity, now everyone points out, you know what the Gemara says? Receive it and make it appear as if b'shoigeg it got lost. The Rambam for some reason doesn't give that option. The Rambam says if there's Eva, then noitle b'fanav, take it. But don't have any benefit from it. Of these goyim many days. So 3 days prior. So how long can you not do business? All of the days of the holiday is called the day of the holiday, and then in addition 3 days prior in Eretz Yisrael. Shloisha, for example, if they have a holiday 3 days, they have a holiday of 4 days, they have a holiday of 10 days. Kol oisan hayamim kiyoim echad hein. V'kulam asurim im shloisha yamim lefneim if you are in the Holy Land. Chevra halacha dalit, this is very important. I know the censor wrote the words Edoimim. The Rambam wrote the words Noitzrim. Here we have Shitas Rabbeinu of the Rambam. Noitzrim, Christians, Oivdei Kochavim. And V'yoim Rishon Hu Yoim Edom. Who argues with the Rambam? We learned this in the beginning of Avodas Tosfos. He holds in France that the Goyim in France then were Minhag Avosseinu B'Yodeinu. In other words, they were just, they were not really believers in Yashka. They were just following their traditions. We go with that. But the Rambam says, no, that they are considered Goyim. And therefore, Sunday is a Goyish holiday. That's why Cheder should never be closed on Sunday. It's mamish. In the Holy Land, you can't do business with Christians 3 days prior. Chamishi, Shishi, Shabachol Shabbos v'Shabbos. He's not saying Shabbos because of Hilchos Shabbos, you can't do business with him. Now, would the Rambam say this today in the Western world? Probably not. Because again, it depends. The Rambam himself will write later that if you know they're not religious, but if they're religious, you got a problem. The day that they gather to appoint a new king, and during that day they do special worship to idols. That's considered a holiday, even though it's not a yearly fixed holiday. That in Israel, 3 days prior, out of Israel, on the day proper, you cannot have any business engagements with them. Avol, or give gifts, etc. Avol, oivet kochavim. She'oiso hu chag la'atzmi, but if it's his private holiday, and on his private holiday, he's being moided to his star, he's praising his star, which is either on his birthday, or on the day that he cuts his beard, or he cuts his hair, or on the day that he came back from the sea, or on the day that he was taken out of jail, or on the day that he's making a party for his son. And only for that person. Anytime that goyim have a minhag to mark lahavdil, what we call a yard site. So if they have a family member that passed away, and they every year on that day they make it into a chag. So if that goy is an idol worshiper on that day, to do any, as we mentioned, all of the dinim and halacha aleph. The chol misa. Anytime there is a death that is marked by burning the articles of that person and offering incense, the yadua, that practice is connected to idol worship. Now here he writes, this is going to be like Tosfos says. No, it's people that you know are religious. Just that Rambam gives a blanket statement that noitzim are religious. But avol oisam shesmechem, like people, right, that in America they celebrate kratzmach. They're semechem boy, the oichlim, the shoisim, and umeshamrem oisam mipnei minig. Or because of Kavod HaMelech, but if they are not moide in it, then then you can do business with them. Halacha vav. Any article which is distinguished because this is used in this location to idol worship, that article also you cannot sell it to idol worshippers. But things that are not unique, I'll give you, that Rambam gives a mashal. Levoina zaka, which is used on the Beis Hamikdash, which is probably why they used it for idol worship. Pure frankincense they used to use in idol worship. You're not allowed to sell to an idol worshipper levoina zaka. You can sell to them, even though you're selling him bread, maybe he's going to offer his bread to an idol, that's not your cheshbon, because it's not only used for idol worship. Now, but if the guy tells you, I am buying it, even the loaf of bread, the little shtickle salt, only if you do something to it which will not allow him to use it to his idol worship according to their laws. Like if you have an animal that you're selling to him, make it blemished, because they are not makriv chasal averes kechavim. Halacha zayin. You have levoina zaka, you have pure frankincense, and you have not pure frankincense, and you mix it all together, you can sell it to him. Even articles that he with effort could separate, that you're not choishish. We're not speaking about liquid, we're speaking about granules. But once it's mixed together, you're good. Halacha 8. Similarly, you may not sell to a guy something that could harm people. You're not allowed to sell guns to Ovdei Kochavim. Clear. You can't sell dubim. You cannot sell aroyos. No, it's wild animals. Bears, lions, clay zayin, weapons. Uchavalim v'shal shalois. All different types of chains that were used to put prisoners in. You may not sell it to idol worshippers. You can't sharpen their weapons. You can't even sell it to Jews that we suspect are wholesaling also to idol worshippers. Right. If a Yid is a bandit, you can't sell the bandit his gun. Halacha 9, if we are living in Golos and we have an understanding, we're living in peace with our neighbors, like Yidden in America, you are allowed to sell to the U.S. government, even going with the Rambam, even I'm saying it's not a religious country, but Brazil, a religious country, you can sell to the Brazilian army weapons. Why? Because if there's going to be a war, who are they protecting? All of its citizens. Since they're living in peace and they're protecting the Yiddish populace, so that's okay. They are protecting us as well. Listen to this. If a city has in it an idol, you can walk around it, you can't walk through it. Wow. If the idol was placed outside of it, walk through it. Look how far we walk away. Let's go weiter. If you're going from place to place, you can't walk through a city that has an idol. Even though if the only way to get to your destination is walking through the city, and they placed an idol there because that's part of everyone is like giving cover to the city that has an idol. If there was an option to walk, if there's another highway to get to your destination, ironically, then you are allowed to walk through the city. If it happened that you're going through this way, that's a fine, because since you're not forced to walk through the city, it's not being mechabed that much to idol. Halacha Yud Aleph. They would regularly build a dome-like structure under which they would place an idol. So if they're building a house, even in their houses, you're building a dome, you're not allowed to build the dome part. But if you build it, scharei mutar. Why, guys? What did we learn? An idol is asur only by designation. Misham she'avodah zara. What's the dome? Misham she'avodah zara only becomes asur b'hana at sheyavd, until it's used. You're only building it. It wasn't used yet, so then you can have hana if you did it. But if you're building a larger building, as long as you're not building the dome itself, you can build everything up until the dome. Halacha Yud Beis. If a city, there's an idol in the city, and in the city you have certain shops that are me'utarais, it's adorned with roses, with myrtles, with fruits, and other stores that are not adorned. That's a sign, says the Rambam, that the storekeepers that have adornments on their stores, again, the concept of the idol in a city, everything in the city could have been connected to Avodah Zarah. So Don't have enough from the store. Don't patronize the store. Don't buy anything from that store. Don't go into the store. That the reason why they adorn their store, and the other store, even though we spoke before about not going into the city to begin with, but if you went into the city, right, derech mikra, then you can have from those stores. Stores, right, that are owned by let's say by the church, asur l'sachran mepnei shemahan averis kechavim. You're benefiting the false deity. Now, the other way around, just to know if I own something, can I rent it to them? There's many halachas. If I cannot rent my property if they're going to gather in their l'shem avodah zarah. But if they're doing any other activity other than religious activity, as long as I'm charging and I'm getting good rent, in other words, they're not benefiting because I gave them a discount. That's already much less problematic. There might be a maras ayin involved. Let's go back. If a person sells his house for idol worship, Damav asurim bahana v'yerlichem liyam hamelech. Aval oivdei kochavim she'ansu Yisrael, and they stole your house, and then they put an idol in it, but they stole it in a way that they forced the sale. Then damav mutarim. Since you couldn't have prevented it, then you can benefit from their money. V'koisev v'mayla bar koi shalahem. Going and registering anything in their judicial system, when it's a religious judicial system, you have to do that, because if you're not going to record certain things, then they're going to claim that it was never yours to begin with. Flutes that belong to idols, right? You can't use them to make a eulogy. You are allowed to attend a market that is, put together by idol worshippers, and you can buy over there behemoth Avodas bigo yusan, and you can buy from over there houses and fields and karamim, and you are allowed to record everything in their arka'os. If the sale doesn't directly get taxed to idols or to the church. But the rule then is that a balabayis that sold over there in the markets, he did not have to pay a tax to the idol. But if you are buying from the merchants, not from a balabas, you have to know the way the world worked then. In those markets, a market of a Christian market, the merchants paid a tax to the church. What happens if Avad and you bought it from the Tagar? Which you shouldn't have done. Now, you gave the money. You're not taking money from Avodah Zarah. You're giving them hana. You're going to get penalized. If you bought an animal, you have to mutilate your animal. Now, there's an isur. You're not allowed to make an animal treif. Not in a way that it makes a treif. You have to learn hilchas. We learned this in Chulin. So under the final joint.
While it's alive?
Yeah, you can't. We're going to get penalized. You won't be able to have enough from it. Let them rot. Throw them into the Yam HaMelech. Lakach Eved, even though you're not allowed to kill him, but if that person is in danger, you're not allowed to save him. If an idol worshiper is making a wedding party for a son or daughter, you are not allowed to have enough from that meal. Even if the Jew is bringing his own kosher food, don't go to a wedding of a idol worshiper. It's called umesibas oivdei kochavim acholei. From when can you not eat from him? Not only during the wedding party proper. And 30 days. And furthermore, if that family made another su'udah up until a year later, but they're saying they're doing it as an extended celebration, again, not only I might not even go there with my own kosher food. Is because my pnei oivdei kochavimu, as it says in Parshas Kisisa, v'kara l'cha, and if you are going to go and eat mizivchai, what might end up happening is you might intermarry with them. Halacha tezayin, Bas Yisrael, a Jewish woman, loy seinik es bena, may not nurse a child of an idol worshipper, mepnei shemegadelas ben la'avodas kechavim. Don't serve as a midwife. But if a woman is giving birth and you're not going to help her out, there's going to be animosity, then you have to help her out. When it comes to nursing, what did Chazal tell us? Who remembers with Danny that nursing, a woman can say, I don't want to nurse because I'm going to be misnavelas al baili. So that's why she has a way out. By being a nursemaid, by being a birthing mother, you don't have a way out. A midwife. you can have a idol worshipping woman to be the midwife. She can also be a nursemaid as long as it's being done on the property of a yid. We're chayish that idol worshippers are prone to kill us. So if they're giving birth in their property, they might kill you. But if it's an hour to shus, why does it have to be an hour property? Kedei sheloi sahar genu, for them not to kill us. Now, even though we are allowed to do it, but as we learned in the Gemara, that's the real chalav akum, is metamteim. So it's definitely ideal not to have a Yiddish child nursing from a non-Jewish woman. Ha'alacha yud zayin. Ha'hoilchem letarfus oiv, people that are going to these places of idol worship. This is not a market. This is like to a religious gathering. People that are going there, on the way going there, asur lasis v'lasis iman. But when they are returning, then you can do business with them. You know when? If they are returning individually. If they're not coming back in a group. If they're coming back in a group, you know what we are afraid? Shema daitam lachzer. They might change their mind and return. Guys, this is a lesson in Avodas Hashem. How many times did it happen? Lahavdil. We went, let's say, to Yerushalayim and HaKodesh. We went to a Rebbe. Went to the Rebbe. And when we're going back, that if you are in a group, we should inspire each other. Say, you know what? Let's go one more time. Let's go back. So they gave. So they might be going back. Yisrael, since a Yid Bipnimius is so far removed from idol worship, so if he's on the way there, you can do business with him. Because we say that he might not end up going there. On the way back, it's asur. Wow. Because now the guy is going to say, you see, I benefited because I went there. He's going to give thanks. Yisrael Mumar, we are machmer on both sides. Bein ba'alicha, bein b'chazira asur. Final halacha yudches. Yisrael shehalach liyirid shalevis Kochavim. If the Yid is going to a fair put together by idol worshippers. So ba'chazira, asur lasis imoi. Why? Shema, Avodas Kochavim machar lehem sham. That's something else. He might have sold an idol to them. And udmei Avodas Kochavim yad Yisrael. No, he might have had money by selling something he was not allowed to sell. And the money of an idol is asur. Right? So you can't do business with them because you might end up taking money that was given in exchange of an idol. Is mutarim ba'no, guys, because the may avodah zara biyad nachrim mutarim. The may avodah zara biyad nachrim mutarim. Therefore, you're not concerned, but the einoisim v'noisim Yisrael aboy metafros hahu v'loim Yisrael mumar by a yid loy b'chalichasei v'loy b'chazirasei. Here, at least to see something positive in a yid. That even though Yisrael Mumar, we learned, right, has a din of a goy, no, for this he has a din of a yid. So you're machmir from both sides, chevre, to be continued. Wow.